Garrick launched their Series 3, Mark II, Blancpain decide to bring us some ceramic goodness, plus the latest from Louis Erard and Alan Sorberstein. All this and more on today's show of the Scottish Watches podcast. Welcome. It has been a wee while since Dave has had the opportunity to slag off something that I am wearing, and I thought after all, the heinous crimes that I committed against him last week and his Teddy Ruxpin outfit, of which he's wearing a variation of today, you can see that in the YouTube video along with what I'm wearing, I thought I'd give Dave the opportunity to give me a bit of a Scottish slagging. So Dave, hit me with your worst.
I mean, I've already given you the worst of it, but all I'm going to say is you do look like a reject from a 1980s kind of teen flick type movie, some American football star.
That wasn't really that good. I expected more from you, Dave, but you are wearing your standard stripes as per usual. I mean, you have two changes of outfit, but this week you're going with that one, so that's fine. But we're here to talk about watches and what has been happening in the industry. Again, I'm just mesmerised by the fact that there are so many cool timepieces coming out, unique designs and styles, when historically these have been the months where things have been super quiet. It's that lull in between Watches and Wonders, Geneva Watch Days, and the point in time where most of the Swiss watchmaking industry kind of go to sleep. They take their holidays, they disappear for a bit. But me and Dave have been busy. We actually guested on Sam from Casual Watch Talk, his Sunday live stream. Me, Dave, we had, I was going to say somebody from Zodiac, but they're now at Christopher Ward, that's Mike Pearson, and we had Nicholas from the Fears Watch Company, plus Mark Wheeler on board to talk about watch shows and what they really mean. So that is something that will be linked in our show notes, a good opportunity to tell you to play along at home. Click on link in your podcast player, and you can have that sitting there as you listen to us, as you are walking the dog, as you're eating your din-dins, or whatever it is you get up to during your podcast. And then a few days later, if you want to check us out on YouTube, that's where you'll find the video version of this, where Gav will edit it up supremely, and he will deliver those delights to you through your whatever player you use. If it's your television, if it's your tablet, if it's your smartphone. I should probably crack on and get busy with the first watch, Dave.
So maybe we should begin with something that is actually the end, and that is a new watch, well, a sixth part of a watch that's a new watch in a six-part series, but it's the end of the series by Romain Gaultier.
Did you notice how I didn't pronounce that at the start of the show? I kind of went, oof, I'm going to miss that one.
I noticed you fumbled past that one, but we will talk possibly later on about pronunciations as well. You even can't get that right, but I think I maybe got something right, but we will see what the viewers have to say. Viewers and listeners have to say later on.
The congregation, Dave. The congregation.
The congregation. Oh, that sounds very religious. This is edition 6. So the C by Romain Gaultier, he has released a series, funnily enough, of 6 watches, this one being the final one. The series started off in 2021. This is the Continuum by, funnily enough, Gaultier, and he has released versions over the years, finalising where we are now with edition number 6. All of them are definitely very similar, but use extremely different colour palettes, tones and designs in regards to dial, movement finishing and case finishing as well. It is a titanium case. I guess the clue is in the name. This is a lightweight titanium case paired with a rubber strap, so you've got that sporty vibe that all of the C-series watches do. What have they done here though? You now have a partially open dial. So the kind of bottom half of the dial has been opened up. You've got this kind of open working in there. You've got a sandblasted titanium dial or part of the dial in the upper area. The hands are slightly off center. You've got the running sub-seconds at 7 o'clock here as well. And you've got lots of little red highlights in there. I think this is a great looking watch. I actually really like these. I saw them a couple of years ago and it was one of the kind of, I guess, independent watchmakers who's doing something definitely in his own way. Absolutely, it's a watch. It's got a semblance of a watch. It's not maybe as out there as something like, say, MB&F, but for sure, this one really works in its own right. Now, what do we talk about? It's a natural finish as opposed to being a PVD type finish on this watch as well. 41mm in diameter, along with all of the previous editions. 9.55mm thick, so nice and slim, although we use the word thick, and 49.5mm lug to lug, so it keeps it pretty compact on the wrist for a 41mm watch. Of course, it says in-house manual wind caliber here, running at 28,800 vibrations per hour, 60-hour power reserve, so pretty good on all fronts there. You've got the grey rubber strap on this edition, which is paired with a naturally finished titanium pin buckle. Limited run, only 88 pieces. Price point, not the cheapest, but likewise also not the most expensive. 48,000 Swiss francs, excluding tax, of course, always excluding tax. I really like the look of this. Ricky probably will like this as well. Let's see what he's got to say. Let's hope he doesn't speak with an American accent.
I'll try my best not to. As much as probably the Americans could understand me more, but that was something that came up recently when I was speaking to Barbara. The fact that we get comments all the time on YouTube, by email. Oh, I love the podcast, but I can't understand what you're saying, which is a bit of an oxymoron because how can you enjoy it if you can't understand if we're just babbling? And my answer to that one is, do you understand James McAvoy, Billy Connolly, Kevin Bridges, Sean Connery, all these other Scottish people that perhaps have a more thick accent? Gerard Butler, there's all these people out there, so surely you must be able to understand us approaching 600 episodes. But anyway, I digress. Let's get back to the watch. The reason that I picked this one to talk about is I don't think this is a brand that gets enough headlines. Occasionally when they have a new release or something, yeah, okay, they might get a couple of column inches. But the look of these, the fact that I've spoken with Pietro Limited Edition about this brand in the past, and I've seen them too, maybe many, many years ago at Cross in Geneva at Baselworld, and the fact that they've got this thing out here that mixes all the different styles, dark grey, light grey, orange, mixes of shine on the front, the back, the different bridges when you actually look at the movement through the clear case back. I just think it's really, really cool. And the fact that they've had so many different iterations in the past, they've had full black, they've had more classic styles, and then they've got this. And the fact that it's got that little baby, almost aluminium insert on the crown in orange, I thought, I'm going to be nice to Dave because that looks like his top.
Well, I think actually it's red lacquer, to be precise, that little insert in the crown. Might be wrong, but I think it's red lacquer. But yes, I agree. It is a fantastic looking watch in my opinion, and you're absolutely right. Amongst a couple of other brands that we're probably going to talk about in this episode that are definitely not getting the publicity, column inches, or talked about as much as they should be.
Yeah, and we try our best to shine a light on independence as much as possible, as long as people are interested in it. And a bit like Tim Mosso, and a quick shout out to the guys over at the 1916 company, previously Watchbox, previously Watch You Want, previously Golfberg. They changed their name more than Dave changes his pants. And I recently did a quick recording with Tim Mosso for their podcast that'll be out in the next couple of weeks. But again, it just reminds me of how much of an absolute boffin he is, the equivalent of Dave across the Atlantic. You ask him a question about a watch and he'll give you reference numbers, when it came out and how many they sold. So big shout out to Tim there. But he is another evangelist of the independence brands like this, like Dave Bethune last week. And I think that's why I'm on a bit of a kick, going past the usual. It's not just the Swatch Group, it's not just LVMH and Richemont, looking at those independents that deliver fantastic quality at prices that you may think might have an extra zero in the end. That's another thing we always talk about. This might be in the mid 40s to 50,000s. You've got MB&F, you've got Grubel Forslys that go up, up and up, and then you've got Jacob & Co. And there's another brand that we'll probably be talking about in the not so distant future. So this one I think is a win. If you're listening to us, definitely check the show notes to see what we're talking about. And it's time to move on to something else, Dave.
Possibly something sketchy. What would that be, what we're talking about, Ricky?
Well, this was a video that I got to see. It was recommended as a clip on YouTube, and it's Joe Rogan, who is a bit of a closet watch geek. He's had Matt Farah from the Smoking Tire podcast. Previously, he had a fantastic podcast with Cameron Weiss about watches in collaboration with Crown and Caliber before Hodinkee got involved with that shenanigans. And there was a guest on talking about people that wear Breitlings are a little bit dodgy. And back in the day, if there were mercenaries across the world doing nefarious things covertly, then perhaps if you spotted somebody that had an accent that didn't belong where you were and they were wearing a Breitling, you'd have to watch out.
So if you want to have a look at what we're talking about, please do check out the show notes, as there will be a link to that very YouTube video from Joe Rogan with Jack Carr. So check out the show notes and you will be able to have a look at it for yourself, and you can make up your mind what agency they may or may not work for.
But the next watch we're going to talk about is from a local guy. He is just across the border down south in England, and that is David from Garrick Watches, a brand we've spoken about a couple of times in the past, but the problem is getting a hold of him when he's not got a drink in his hand is very tricky. And recently, Tetrarch Limited Edition did a collab. We've talked about it in the show. We did a wrist check, and that led on to a little bit of back and forward behind the scenes. And we do have an episode with David from Garrick coming out soon. But it just so happens to coincide with a new release, a new watch, a new iteration of one of his series. So, Dave, tell us all about it.
Okay, who are we talking about here? We are talking about Garrick. Garrick being an English-based independent watchmaker, one who can absolutely hold themselves up as high in terms of quality, in-house manufacture, as pretty much any other brand out there, including all the ones based in Switzerland.
I would think of him a little bit like Roger Smith, but on the mainland, and slightly less expensive, slightly more production.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comparison. I think Roger really does stand probably head and shoulders above everybody. He is one of the absolutely top 1% of the 1% of people, but Garrick and David are definitely people who can come in not that far below, significantly above the vast majority of things. So this is the Garrick S3 Mark II. They produce a tiny number of watches a year. In fact, where you may have heard of them before was a friend of the show, Nicholas from Fears, did a collaborative watch with them a couple of years ago. That's really kind of taking that quintessentially English design language, aesthetic and feel from two brands that are based in England and getting together to produce a very cool watch. Again, even that watch, very limited numbers available of that watch each year because, unfortunately, or fortunately, Garrick doesn't make that many. So if you do get one and you're fortunate enough to get one, it's very much a rarity in the world of watches. This is the successor to their S3 Mark I, funnily enough. The Mark II maybe gives that away, and also the S2 Deadbeat Seconds. This is the S3 Mark II. It's going to be available both in steel and in gold cases, with price points not that far apart. This watch, I would say, is definitely in the very considered purchase, but extremely good value for what you're getting. So, before we start getting into the watch, £27,490 in a steel case, £33,495 in a gold case. Both of those before taxes, of course. So you do need to add the extra 20% in the UK to that for VAT, or whatever rate you're charged in your local market. So back in 22, as I said, they did that collaboration with Fears, which is where you're possibly going to have heard of the brand before you maybe heard about the brand themselves. They've upped their game though. The level of finishing on their updated open work dial frames and movements and cases is just exceptionally good. Each watch is handmade to order, so this is not something that you just walk in and buy off the shelf. Lots of customizations available. So on things like the base plates, on the gear train of the watch, you can choose finishings, colors, different techniques to be used. So you really can make this watch absolutely your own. This features his in-house UR-G04 caliber. This has been developed and built in-house, and all of these are regulated to +3 seconds a day in terms of variation, which is well within COSC. In fact, these are pretty much guaranteed to run at a much better rate than the Grade A COSC certification. Of course, that being -4 +6. That means these watches are not only beautifully finished, but running at the very top end in terms of horological excellence and timekeeping. So you get to choose your steel case or your gold case. That will really come down to aesthetic because they're not that far different in price. If you're in the £28,000 category for a watch, you're more than less likely to also be able to stretch yourself to that low 30s if you really want gold. Nice to see a brand out there not excessively gouging for gold. There's a few of us out there, a few brands doing that. A lot of them, though, when you want to go from steel to gold, it does cost quite a bit more to go up. So really nice to see the guys at Garrick doing that as well. Lots of beveling, hand finishing to be seen on this. Definitely well worth you checking out the show notes, or if you're watching this on YouTube, the pictures will be flashing up in front of you as we speak. You get to also choose little tweaks like the hands, whether you want his kind of anchor hands, which are definitely something that you'll only really see from Garrick, or a more traditional hand in there as well. And what's the star of the show? That big oversized balance that's in there, that's something that's relatively unique to Garrick. If you see the Fears Garrick collaboration, you can also see that big balance proudly at 6 o'clock on the kind of dial area on show for everybody to see. So I really like this in terms of classical styled watchmaking. Not usually my aesthetic, but I can definitely get on board with this.
I love the technology. I love listening to the gentleman himself telling the story of how he came to be. This episode that's already recorded and is being edited up, it might be out on Monday, it might be the week after. It is fantastic. Pietro came on to help because it was Pietro that introduced us to him, and getting the story from the ground floor about how this master magician when it comes to mechanical timepieces got his break in the industry, having used to be involved in hacking mobile phones. We're talking reprogramming generation 1, now we talk about 5G. He was there at 1G. We're talking the 80s, the 90s, the Dynatac, back before digital technology was around, and he took it from being involved in IT and things like that all the way through to washing the sins of electronics away and going way back hundreds of years. So that is an episode you'll want to check out, because he talks about the fact he scours the internet. He's on eBay, he's on different auction websites looking for equipment that he can utilise to bring back that old school world of design technology and production manufacturing. So this watch here is just a testament to what he's managed to accomplish, and the oversized balance, the graining, the finishing, the anglage, everything that's involved with Garrick. He does rose engine turning. He's got a linear machine he was talking about on the show that's coming out. Fantastic. Look at the pictures, watch the video, and get subscribed, get following us, because that episode, when it drops, will be a cracker. And Dave, what else should we crack on with?
Pronunciations, Ricky. Pronunciations, I think.
Very true, and I'll read this one out because it's kind of about you, Dave. Here we go. Dave's occasionally eccentric pronunciation has become a much-loved meme, an essential part of the charm of the Scottish Watches podcast. It's time to compliment Dave on correct pronunciation. In episode 568, he talked about the oxidation of metals. As a fellow scientist, I'm something of a scientist myself, this was a great thing to hear. Oxidation is the correct word. Many guests use the made-up word oxidization. Make them stop. Thank you, Dave. Thank you. Keep up the good work. Cheers from Mark. Now, I read that one and I thought, I wonder. So I went looking, and because Mark is originally from the UK, we know who he is, but we're not going to divulge his exact location. He now stays somewhere else in the world. I went on to the Cambridge Dictionary website, and I looked up oxidization to see if it was a made-up word, and apparently not, Dave. Apparently you can say it both ways, a little bit like turquoise and turquoise.
There is only one pronunciation of that infamous colour, and we've already dealt with that, but we can move on. I was brought up and I was educated to say oxidation. Oxidization to me sounds like a bit of a somethingization of that word. I will leave that full word out because we have to stay family friendly on this show.
We do. And a family favourite is the Blancpain 50 Fathoms Bathyscaphe. It's been around for a long time. There have been many iterations. There have been many collaborations. Perhaps there was a Plastic Fantastic release in the not so distant past. But the guys within Swatch Group are back. They have new dials, they have new colourways, and they are going back to black with, well, fantastic looking watches. Another brand that perhaps doesn't get quite the recognition that it should, because within Swatch Group, everybody likes to talk about Omega. Everybody likes to talk about Swatch. But these guys were, well, they were there in the beginning. They were the guys that first created a dive watch, perhaps.
So what we're talking about here, we are talking, of course, about the Blancpain 50 Fathoms Bathyscaphe in ceramic. Now, there have been some ceramic iterations of this watch before, but there are now 3 new versions of it, which also have a little bit of an additional ceramic trick up their sleeve. We have a complete calendar variant, a chronograph variant, and a more, as expected, automatic option in here as well. What is the trick that all 3 of these watches have up their sleeve? They now have a full ceramic bracelet to get that full-on all ceramic vibe and feel about it as well. Now, these are all in black ceramic, not in any of your funky colours that some other brands do so well. This is the much more traditional and classic blacked out variant in terms of what you would probably expect your ceramic watch to be coloured. Obviously, the Bathyscaphe 50 Fathoms model is one of the most iconic dive watches out there. Lots of argument about who was first. Was it Rolex? Was it the Blancpain? Who knows really? Lots of people will argue about that. We will maybe steer wide of that argument for the sake of a couple of years. But let's look to see what they've got on offer here. What you get with that in terms of ceramic is a material that is 5 times harder than stainless steel, 4 times harder than titanium.
So it's a little bit like steel on Viagra.
It's a little bit like steel mated with titanium and they had this strange child. But of course, you can't make metal into ceramic. But anyway, we'll go with it. Ceramic, just don't drop it, kids, seems to be the trick. So I think these are good looking watches. Of all three of them, two of them are a little bit fussy for me. Not so keen on the chronograph version, definitely not so keen, and definitely also not so keen on the all calendar version. If it's for me, I think it would be that traditional automatic version that I would be looking for. 43.6
I don't think
millimeters.
so. I had a look at all three of them, and I think that one looks too barren. It's almost as if they had too much free space below the pinion and they just threw in the word bathyscap. They didn't put anything else in there, whereas they've got so much stuff at the top. I think the Chrono's the best looking of the three.
Well, you're of course entitled to your wrong opinion, but you know, we can move on from that. We can accept
It's even got the date window down at the half 4 o'clock position. You not happy?
the 4.5 o'clock, you mean 4.5 o'clock.
Sorry, my pronunciation was off.
Exactly, yes. Go and oxidise yourself. Anyway, other than that, 43.6 millimeter, you always expect these watches to be slightly bigger generally than their metal counterpart when they're made in ceramic, very much the same as the Speedmasters in ceramic from Omega. In terms of thickness here though, not the thinnest watches in the world. The chronograph coming in at over 15 millimeters thick, which is pretty chunky, it has to be said. The calendar at just over 14 millimeter, and the automatic diver at around 13.8, 13.9 millimeters in thickness. So none of these particularly felt on the wrist. That said though, 300 meters of water resistance. Price point wise, what are we talking about? Well, for the calendar version and the chronograph version, you have got 26,000 of your US dollars to get yourself one of these, or slightly less at 21,300 if you're looking only at the automatic version. Personally, I think they are not bad looking. Of all of the 50 Fathoms, the bathyscaphe is, it has to be said, not my favourite by anything. I like the original 50 Fathom style a lot better with that kind of domed bezel on there, although I'm also not a great fan of it, of the big blancpain on this side of the case. I would definitely, if I had to buy a diver from the Swatch Group, not be purchasing from this brand. I would definitely be dropping back into my old favourite, that being Omega. A lot less money, just as technically competent a watch, and even if you do want ceramic, you have that option for considerably less than these ones. So yes, nice try, not for me. Of all three, the boring one suits me, but I still wouldn't be buying it.
Fair enough, that is your opinion. You're entitled to have a wrong one. Again, I love the one that has got the green dial, and it's ceramic, it's black, it's got the chronograph registers. I don't like the date position just because it throws the symmetry off, but apart from that, I think it's a great looking watch. There's nothing wrong with it. The price is a little bit high compared to Omega. Yes, you're quite correct there. But again, it's something that's a little bit different. It's not the usual thing. It's a little bit reminiscent of my Tudor Fast Rider Black Shield, which has been off the market for a number of years, and that was extremely cheap, obviously. But no, I quite like this one, and I never really liked the original 50 Fathoms. I always thought that the bezel was it was like a spare tyre. You know, it just didn't quite look good enough. It looked like a rubber ring. It was just too big versus contemporary designs that kick around nowadays. And I've not really seen that many people wearing them out and about. So perhaps people do agree with me over you, Dave.
Well, it's entirely possible that they're also wrong, but of course they are entitled to their opinion, it has to be said. Swatch Watch, when they decided to do the plastic fantastic version of these, of course, they did choose the original because, of course, they are correct. That said, not so keen on most of those colourways, other than that little red number that they've got, which I do quite like the look of. Anyway, we should maybe move on from that because we have more writings and musings from some of our listeners.
We do, and we always ask you guys to get in touch with us. So if you've got something you want to comment on, you've heard in the show, or you've got some ideas about something you'd like us to talk about, perhaps a guest, a brand that we've not spoken about before, or a model or an iteration that is out there that has not caught our eye just yet, Best way to get in touch is always by email. Old school, it works, it's tried and tested. If you drop us a DM on Instagram, the chances are it will get lost because so many bots and random things end up in our inbox that Miziel has a hard time fighting through it all. So drop us an email. That email address is info@scottishwatches.co.uk. And we've got a rather lengthy one in, Dave, and you're used to having a rather lengthy one in, so read this one out.
Better getting a lengthy one in than giving a lengthy one out. Anyway, hi team. Really enjoyed listening to the podcast. Caught up the episode this morning with the Met Cops, which was really great. The section on Facebook scams got me thinking about something that regularly appears in my Facebook feed, which is watch competitions. I've no idea which are legit and which are fakes. I'm generally pretty cautious of all of them, which is a shame if there are some which solid watch enthusiasts run as a business. If there are one or two that are legit, it might be worth inviting them on as guests, or if not inviting them on, see if there is a professor of statistics at Glasgow University who might come on and talk about the odds of winning. Might be a little bit of fun. Or a watch out to anyone considering sinking their hard-earned watch fund into something completely unwinnable. Anyway, just a thought. Cheers, Tony.
And you mentioned the Met Police there. That is a great episode we were going to talk about at the end of the show to remind you to go and have a listen if you haven't. If you weren't interested, if you saw the title and it put you off and you thought, yeah, I'm not going to be visiting London, it ain't all about that. It's all about just being safe out and about in general, or buying or selling, plus a couple of Facebook scams that are kicking around. And we actually met up with one of the gentlemen from the Met Police down at British Watchmakers Day. And that ties in perfectly because we have got the two people that were at the helm for British Watchmakers Day here to tell you what's been happening with the Alliance of British Watch and Clock Makers, how things have been, what they're working on just now, and what's coming down the line for next year. It's been a while, guys. What have you been up to?
Well, I'm just marvelling that we're sitting this close to each other. I don't think we've sat this close together since about 2007, actually, have we? Yeah, but no, we've been really busy, Ricky. I've been away.
Lawyer didn't get you off on it then?
No. No, not this time. So, I've just got back recently from a really fascinating trade delegation with the government to Saudi Arabia. I was over there with Roger Smith, and we were given the opportunity to showcase the British watch sector. It was absolutely incredible. The delegation was principally to support Saudi's Vision 2030, and it was in Riyadh. It was staggering level of ambition. It really is. It's really hard to get your head around just the scale of their plans to develop their economy and society to a great extent. So what a great opportunity to showcase British watches. We were there with a very select bunch of people. We're both ambassadors for the Great Britain campaign. So it was really an extension of that, but also, as I say, a very unique opportunity. So Roger and I we decided to do an in conversation at the expo, and we took along Roger's own Great Britain watch and Daniel's anniversary. And we talked very much about Roger's story, which is compelling. We had a number of people in the audience who were just so delighted to hear the story in person from Roger. It really is compelling. I mean, all the years I've heard it, and it never gets boring. And somehow every time Roger talks about it, something new arises, which I've not heard before. So that was great. And then we segued to presenting a number of British trade members of the Alliance. So I took over two Christopher Ward watches. They're 12, which is the skeletonized watch. A Bel Canto. Managed to get our mitts on one of those because they're very difficult to get hold of. We took Bremont's Terra Nova and their soon-to-be-released Supermarine 500 ceramic watch.
Why the hell were you taking a Bremont? I mean, what was the reason behind that?
Well, because they've joined the Alliance.
About time.
Yeah, and we've been. Well, I mean, just to backtrack slightly, just to update you on that. So, I think you're aware, Ricky. I've been talking to Bremont for quite a long time. And with Davide coming on board as CEO, those conversations really got quite meaningful last autumn in particular. And then it was just really a case of finding the right time to announce. I'm sure you saw Davide at British Watchmakers Day. It was great to welcome him along and to give him the opportunity to meet quite a few of our other members as well, and to really get a sense of what's happening with our community of watchmakers. And we decided to hold off announcing until after Watches and Wonders. They were obviously, they've made a massive commitment to that. We just didn't want to get it lost in the mix with that, so we waited until after that before making the formal announcement. But these conversations have been happening for quite a long time. So obviously wanted to represent Bremont. But, I have to say, Ricky, it's always important to understand as well, whether Bremont had been a member or not, I would have still felt very happy to take their watches, because we're a trade body. We're not a club of trade brands. We're a trade body. And so we want everyone in the sector to succeed, and we want to showcase everybody. It's just better when everybody works together and we're all inside the tent and hopefully facing in the same direction. So Bremont, as I say, it was a pleasure to show off a couple of their watches. I had an indefatigable Sphinx. Gosh, that's always a mouthful for me. From Mr. Jones, absolutely brilliant piece of amusing wearable art. I love the wit of Mr. Jones watches, and they really exemplify a lot of what makes British watch design different. It is that core sense of wit. And I had with me the watch that I'm actually wearing, which I've sort of semi-purloined, which is a Studio Underdog watermelon watch. Richard did give me permission to hang on to it, but to be frank with you, I don't think he'd have got it out of my Kung Fu grip when we got back. And we also had a Fiers Brunswick Aurora. And I was really delighted to hear from Nicholas. He said that virtually at the same time we were presenting, they got a sale from Saudi Arabia, which was really good to think. Hopefully we'll get a lot more sales in Saudi Arabia, but it was great to have that as the vanguard. So
it was a bit of like a fake Christmas, to be honest. All these watches coming into the house, unpacking, looking at them. Yeah. Trying them on, and then you had to let them go. Although one we did hold on to. Yeah, we've hung on. In fact, Katya wanted to hang on to quite a few more, I can tell you that, but we had to relinquish them in the end. I mean, I think it was when the police turned up. We gave up. But it was fantastic. It was so nice to. I mean, this is really the first proper government trade delegation I've been on where I've been able to take watches to showcase them to a completely new audience and potential market for British watches. I think the Saudis really respected the fact that we'd gone, that we're supporting their aims with Vision 2030. That there are obvious question marks about certain aspects of Saudi, which are very well reported, but our view is very much you've got to talk to people, you've got to keep the conversation going, and there really does feel like there's a big movement for change in Saudi, and that yields a huge opportunity for British watchmaking.
Moving across the table to the other side. How are things, Katya? It's been a while.
Yes, very good. Thank you. Been recovering from British Watchmakers Day 1. Moving swiftly on to British Watchmakers Day 2 and 3 as well.
Thought you might be getting things lined up, because when the first one was the success that we obviously predicted, we've talked about this many times before, and the second one was going to get booked, I thought the chances are you were going to put your marker in the sand for the third one to stop anybody else coming along and trying to capitalise on the success of the event, which many people seem to have tried to do, but we've quashed a number of them in the past, and people are still, the noises are still reverberating around the halls from that day, and even having some guests on the show talking. Most recently, Ben Rousseau was on, but even he was talking about meeting people, enthusiasts walking up, they'd never heard of him, they'd never seen what he was up to. And although he does clocks, and if you're watching the YouTube video, you can see that in my background, people were just blown away. It wasn't pigeonholed. They came along because they love Studio Underdog. They wanted a watermelon or they wanted a pizza watch. They went round, they saw everybody, and their eyes were open to different things. So this is the first opportunity we've had you guys on to talk about it. So Katia, what has the feedback been like on your end? What have the brand been saying and what have the club members been saying?
Just been delighted really that it went well, and most of the people were very happy. I think we reached a big audience for our trade members. There were people traveling from all over the world, from Poland, America, Dubai, everywhere. There were quite a lot of journalists, and just huge thanks to everyone for coming and supporting British brands. And I think a lot of brands were, I mean, they know that they're quite popular, but they were pretty surprised that we gathered such a huge crowd. We're hoping that next one will be just a bit bigger, and then we'll probably have to move to a bigger venue for the third one, because we don't want to turn people away. But yeah, the brands were all very happy. I think pretty much everyone is doing it again, so get excited. And there'll be some new brands coming in as well. Hopefully we'll get over 50 brands this time.
Well, I hear a bit of a rumour that you've kind of grown. I think it maybe was around about the 80 mark of members within the Alliance, and you're almost at the 100 mark now?
Nearly. Just two more to go, and we'll be at 100. Then we'll have to change everything on the website again. The banners, everything.
Everything moves by one because there's an extra digit to play with. We're fastly approaching episode 999, and then it's going to be trouble because when I started the podcast, I never accounted for 4 digits within the code. So I feel your pain on that one. Have you got the dates handy? Do you know what price you're going to be charging next year? And can people buy tickets just yet?
Well, it's 8th of March, 2025. And it's one-day event again. We're going to keep tickets at the same price, and but we're going to try and keep everything the same price, affordable to our trade members to exhibit as well, because that's what it's all about, to give everyone an opportunity to exhibit, from our smallest brands who just starting to and give a great platform to our bigger brands as well.
Well, I noticed the way that you were pricing the trade stands, and you had different sizes available depending on who it was and what they were wanting to showcase. It was literally, in my head, covering the cost of the hall, the staffing, the merchandising, and marketing it. It wasn't like you were... Some places will charge you 5 grand, 10 grand, 20 grand for a stall for one day. You guys were not doing that, so that has to be commended. And again, you're doing this for the benefit of the audience, the people that are coming along who have travelled massive distance. I mean, we obviously travelled all the way from Scotland to come and see you, but you've got people from across the world. You mentioned Poland, you mentioned Dubai. We spotted folks from everywhere, listeners to the show, people that watch our YouTube videos, and there were all kinds of accents in that room. So yeah, massive commendations on that. And I know that next year, hopefully it isn't too much in the way of being more busy, because it was already almost at capacity, but the way that you handled the flow of traffic, doing the split entry system, mornings and afternoons, I couldn't see any problems with it. I thought it was amazing. And we have had so many people get in touch to say, can't believe we missed it. Can't believe we didn't jump on it straight away. So when will those tickets be available?
So, I mean, one advice I can give is join the club, because you'll hear about the tickets first. We're going to give a bit of, advanced access to our club members. We usually give a month. So we'll probably put them live for club members in October, and then give our club members a 1 month head start, and then we'll make it available for general public in November.
And as a refresher for people that want to know what the benefits are of the club, because we try and tell everybody along the way, but even I forget, so it's almost as if I've got a problem with my memory or something. So what are the benefits for the membership, and how much does it cost?
Well, it's £55 a year. And you get a few great subscriptions to a few magazines, get print Oracle time, and if you live in the UK, and digital outside of the UK, GMT digital subscription, as well as Europa Star print for international subscription. And then you're supporting British brands. I mean, everything we do is to support British brands. So it kind of pays us to run our channels, Instagram, website. So we're always looking for new club members to help us and promote British watch brands around the world.
And you're getting an inside track, really, I think, to we, as I said earlier, we're a trade body, but I mean, really, we're a community of watch brands, and I think it does give a genuine inside track to this collective of amazing watch companies now that and clock companies who've been emerging in Britain.
And one thing to stress is a question we have had is, can people outside the UK join? And the answer very much is yes, you can. You don't have to be within the British Isles to be a member of the British Watch and Clockmakers. What would you call it? Is it the community side of it? Because you have the trade side and you have the collector side. Do you differentiate what the membership is called? Is it club members you call them?
Yes, yeah. The individuals, enthusiasts, collectors, aficionados are club members, Ricky. And so, and you're absolutely right. I believe we've got members in 24 countries. And that's brilliant, and it's great that we have so many members in the USA in particular. We've got members in the UAE and across the Middle East, in the Far East. I believe in Australia as well. I mean, in every possible corner of the globe. It's amazing, and of course, we're about building awareness of British watchmaking, and so every new member who comes from across the seas is very welcome, because we know then that the message is getting across. It's people are discovering that Britain does have this incredibly resurgent sector. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Everyone is welcome wherever they are.
And there will be news coming in let's just say over the next couple of months. There may be some news about some other benefits that people will get if they get in early on things. So, yeah, I fully recommend everybody that can and is up for it gets involved, because the benefits you get digitally and tangibly through the letterbox is well worth it. Plus, you get advance notice of certain things. There are other bits and bobs that you're not talking about just now that I know about. So I fully endorse the fact that everybody gets on board with this one. But that is it. So thank you guys for joining me, and we'll catch you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ricky.
Absolutely great to hear from Katia there. The show in 2024, which was the first outing of that show, was absolutely fabulous, a great success. So for next year, we hope to see more of the same and them building on that success. They did take our advice, and I think advice of others as well, not to make the show longer for the second outing, to keep it the same, maybe review a couple of little tweaks around the edges, but all in all, an absolutely fantastic show. So come on 2025, it's going to be a great show again there. Maybe though, whilst we're smiling, we should talk about a watch that should bring a smile to your face.
Yeah, we're going a little bit colourful this episode. Not what I'm wearing, but what we're talking about watch-wise. And there is a watch that has been out for a while that I wanted to get my hands on, and then it disappeared. Then there was another one that came out from this brand, and then it disappeared, because when they do watches, especially collaborations, they have this fleet of enthusiast collectors that just jump at the chance to get an additional watch to add to the watch box. And that is Louis Erard and Alan Silberstein. A couple of brands actually that I don't own. I'd love to own. I do like the colours. And Dave, I believe, has more than one, because I'm pretty sure you've actually wrist checked these types of watches on the show before. And since you own them, you can tell us all about them.
So who are we talking about? We're talking about, of course, Louis Erard, the brand who over the last couple of years have been doing some pretty punchy collaborations. In this case, Alan Silberstein. He was one of, if not the first, one of the first that they did a collaboration with. I own that very first edition. They did two variants of it, with a black PVD case and also with a non-black treated case as well. I have the black version. And over the years, they've done a few different iterations. This one is the new grey dial Louis Erard x Alan Silberstein Smile Day. So what are we talking about here? The first collaboration was, I believe, back in and around 2019. Since then, they've brought out a few different ones. The first one being a very traditional case, a hand wind. Very much still my favourite is the original, I have to say. But since then, they've gone to bring out a couple of different editions. They've done a tourbillon, they've done a skeletonized case, and they've done a couple of different colorways and variations. But this one, I think this is going to fall into my second favourite collaboration one they've ever done. Now, what have they got going on here? Obviously, the clues in the grey dial. It's a grey dial with the case in a kind of brushed and partly polished finish from what I can see from it, and it looks excellent. Not the same case as the first edition, but the same case as they've used in the later editions here as well. Silberstein, taking lots of references from places such as Bauhaus, Kandinsky, various other areas. Lots of bright colours, lots of crazy shapes going on here as well. Something that makes it look quite fun, a little bit playful. Some folk maybe accuse it of being a bit childlike, but I'm a child, so I quite like what's going on here. The 40mm case, you've got these quite distinctive kind of side bars that kind of turn into the lug, and a conical crown that's got a little red insert in there as well. Another little feature, where the Smile Day part of the name comes from, is a little trademark that Alan Silberstein has had since the 1990s, is instead of a day of the week indicator, has a little smiley face, and there are various different emoji style smiling faces that come round there as well. That's located at 6 o'clock on the dial. Like many of them, running on a Sellita SW200-1 Elaborate grade movement. If I remember rightly, I think the very first one I had was actually on an ETA movement, but I think they've been on Sellita for a few years now. Like many of these collaborations, limited to 178 pieces, currently in and around the 4,000 Swiss franc mark, which has crept up a little since 2019, albeit that was 5 years ago, and unfortunately everything in the world has got a little bit more expensive in that last 5 years. Cool looking watch, something different, definitely worthwhile having either this or, in fact, one of the many other Louis Erard collaborations that he's done. If you don't like this, there will be one that you like, because he's done many and many different variations, from super trendy and cool to fun and playful like this.
I love everything about it, apart from the shit strap. I don't like that. So that would be the first thing that I would change, as I do in most watches when I buy them. And there have been many collaborations. Louis Erard, most recently in my mind, the one I liked the most was his collaboration with Konstantin Chaikin, where they did the one-eyed monster. I think they did 2 variations of that, and that, again, that evaporated, went super quick. And then they had one that looked a little bit like one of the Chapek promenades, where it had these striations running from the centre pinion out the way in a sunburst effect. I got to see that in one of the airports. I think it was Geneva Airport just a couple of months ago, coming back from Watches and Wonders. So they do great things. 4,000, again, considered purchase. Money is money, but at the low end, you get a lot of bang per buck. And the grey colour fits in very nicely with the watch that we spoke about. There was multiples of this at the very beginning of the show. This one here will not hang around, so if you do like the look of it, if you want to see what we're talking about, look in the show notes and jump quickly, because they will disappear.
Anyway, we should move on to the wrist check, because Miziel will probably by this point be shouting and screaming in his sleep that we haven't got to that part yet. So, Ricky, you know I love to come second, so you can come first.
Fair enough. I have got a watch that's not out yet. It's on pre-order, and again, if you like it, go and jump and grab it. And it is kind of one of the reasons I am wearing this outfit today, because I think it actually matches in it quite nicely. So what are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about a watch from a brand that has been in touch a number of times. They've sent us one watch in the past, one that I really dug quite a lot. I actually wore it across to Dubai Watch Week, and this is a brand, and I'm going to ruin the pronunciation. I think it's Vincianico, and the watch that they sent us last year was a green Mini. It had a mother of pearl dial, it had a green die coat on top, so you couldn't actually see it underneath. But the one that I'm wearing today, and let me just butcher this one, is called the Redentor Bellinotti. Dave has helped me with that pronunciation, so if it's wrong, it's his fault, Mark. This one is incredible for the money. We're talking €574 on the leather strap. You can also choose to have a bracelet, and they don't load the price. It's only an extra €86 on top. What makes this one different, if you're not looking in the show notes and you're not watching the YouTube video, is the fact it is just art on the wrist. It probably is unisex. I'd say it's probably more for the feminine wrist. That's why I'm wearing it. I'm sure Dave will want to borrow it at some point. It's a 4-layer dial that has multiple different styles. It's got mother of pearl, as I mentioned. It's got carved out stainless steel parts and an aventurine base. This, for the money, is incredible. It's not Swiss made, as in the parts inside are not from Switzerland. It has got a Seiko movement, but everything else about it is bang on. This is an Italian company we got to meet last year at the Vicenza Oro show back in January, and since then we've been in constant communication, because what they do at their price point is pretty damn good. So definitely look in the show notes, have a look at this one, and if you like it, go and grab it.
Specification in this, Ricky, seeing as you managed to miss that part out, it's a stainless steel case, and you've got that off-centre dial in there. As you mentioned, aventurine and mother of pearl on a brass base plate for that dial. 40mm in diameter with a 46.7 lug-to-lug and quite a compact 11.5mm in thickness. You also, I believe, mentioned it has got that Seiko NH05A movement in there. You do get the sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating. And price point wise, around the £500 mark, just under that, just over $600 US. These will begin to ship in and around the middle of July 2024. So if you like that slightly out there, slightly different look and vibe to it, something that's maybe in the dressier end, and you're looking to buy something on a tight budget, then this could very well be the answer.
That's my wrist check done. Those guys do great things. So if you don't even like this one, then a link in the show note will take you to their website and you can have a look at some of the other releases. They had a fantastic orange watch with, I think it was Nagant dial. Again, mispronunciations all across this episode. That one was amazing. But by the time I asked if they could send one across to have a look at and potentially sell to Dave, they had all disappeared. So they're limited editions. They do not hang around. Dave, your turn. Where you go on the rest?
So what's Dave got on today? David has a Grand Seiko on today. David has got his Grand Seiko Sakura, the SBGW 289. This is a 44GS case. I believe one of the first that they did in this smaller 36.5mm size. So my dainty little wrist fits perfectly to it. Hand wound, it's the 9S64 movement, and this was the 55th anniversary piece. It's on their bracelet. It has no micro adjust, but it fits me perfectly, so I'm not going to complain too much. And it has a very much a pink dial, although it probably looks a little bit white here because when the sun is out and it's shiny and bright, the dial does fade off to a white, but it catches just the light and you get these little touches of that Sakura pink in there as well. So that's what I am wearing, albeit I did have a new acquisition.
Ooh.
And what did David manage to get? He got himself
a camera that overexposes.
It is, because it is extremely white. Whiter than a white thing that is white. And I don't know if I move in, if you can see it, but it looks good on my screen. It looks terrible on the other screen. But I've put it onto a black silicone strap because, as we know, the Moonswatch straps are truly, truly terrible.
And for people listening, which Moonswatch is this?
This is the Snoopy edition of the Moonswatch, and it's got the moon phase up in the top dial at the 2 o'clock position. So yes, this comes in either the white finish or the black finish, and I didn't do the stupid thing of standing in a queue hoping to get one. I just forgot all about it. Then when I randomly walked past the swatch stop, I went in and said, "Do you have any?" And they said, "Yeah, we've got both. What one do you want?" And I bought a white one. So that was simple and easy.
Bit like yourself, Dave. Well, it's probably time to tell you guys what we've been up to, and the main thing that we're up to this week hasn't happened yet. We're going to be boarding a plane shortly. As we mentioned in the Met Police episode, don't worry, nothing will be left in our homes when we're away because we're not stupid like that. We have safety deposit boxes, but we are going on a short journey down south to do some cool things. More on that soon. In the last few days, I have been catching up with some YouTube content, as I always do. The thing we're going to be doing is involved with fast cars. Perhaps not quite as fast as what we're going to talk about right now, and that is a 0 to 400 km/h to 0 world record that the folks at Koenigsegg have got back from themselves. Yeah, you heard that right. Last year they managed to lift the record, and this year they've done it again. But when they were talking about it this time, I'm not going to spoil it, there is a link in the show notes to the video, and Gav will cut in some clips. They were very quick to jump on the fact that no electric motors or battery technology is involved in this world record. They did say, still got a 12-volt battery, as you'd expect in a car. Everything is internal combustion powered. So that's cool. And then I went on a bit of a deep dive, and it was to do with the British supermarket industry and the fact that the fights between different brands. We talk about watch brands kind of fighting each other when it's large conglomerates. The more independent ones seem to get on rather well. We've talked about quite a number of collaborations already in this episode. But Channel 4 have taken some of the documentaries and thrown them on YouTube without adverts, if you've got YouTube Premium, which I heartily recommend if you spend a lot of time on there. And they had 3 episodes, one about the crisp wars in the UK between Golden Wonder and Walkers. They had one about the biscuit wars between Club, McVitie's, Rowntree's, all these different ones, and chocolate bars, talking about the difference between all the different high street stores, Thornton's, Oh God, everybody and anybody is involved in this thing. It was just fantastic to go down memory lane, all the places, all the brands of yesteryear, especially the crisp one, because I remember some of these from school. And that's pretty much about it. Dave, what have you been up to?
I've been dicking about with Lego again. They pulled me back in. After many months of managing to avoid the store like the plague, they released a new set, that being the NASA Artemis set, the latest of the big rockets that NASA are planning to send people to the moon and beyond in the future. This follows not so hot on the heels, but hot relatively on the heels of the Lego kit they released of the Saturn V rockets. So they got me back in. And then when I was in, I saw an all new Lamborghini kit, one of their bigger kits of the Countach, and I just reverted back to a schoolboy with a poster on the wall. Other than that, I've also been dragged back into a channel on YouTube that I have watched for many years, but I got dragged back into Auto Shenanigans, a channel that I do watch from time to time, then I forget all about, then it pops up in my feed, and then I have to binge watch quite a few. One of the more sarcastic presenters I've come across on YouTube, he is extremely good at it. He is British and he is exceptionally funny in many, many respects. He also disses many a location, road and town that he visits, so well worth a watch. Check out the show notes if you want to see what that channel's all about. Other than that, yes, I've also been getting prepared for the trip that Ricky mentioned. We can't say where, we can't say who with. Well, not at this point anyway, but it is definitely going to be good fun. Outside of that, I have not been up to too much. That's pretty much it. So, what should we now do, Ricky?
We should tell everybody that that is the end of the show, and they should check out the show notes. We keep telling you that because that's where all the juicy information is. We hide all the hidden content, the explicit stuff right at the bottom. So read through that. Also check out our back catalogue. We have had some fantastic guests. All our guests are fantastic, but the ones of recent time, the Metropolitan Police, that is a good episode just to recap on, a bit of a refresher. Some of the stuff in there is similar to what you've heard in the past, maybe 2+ years ago, but there's a lot of good content that you'll want to absorb and just have in your periphery as you're out and about. Along with that, the Mont Blanc episode that we recorded live with Simon at Watches and Wonders, tremendous response to that. The guys at Mont Blanc loved the fact that we were on their webinar. I didn't think they would, but they did. And I just love the comments and the feedback we've had from you, the listener, the viewer, about how great Simon is, and hopefully we can drag him back onto the show sooner rather than later. Coming up, as I mentioned, Dave from Garrick Watches is going to be on with Pietro. That's one to listen out for. And we've got some other things happening, but we're not going to let the cat out of the bag. But perhaps you might want to keep an eye on our Instagram, because we're going to be announcing our next limited edition watch that will be released in the coming weeks, I reckon. So stay tuned for information on that one. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you again soon.